This week on the Kenn Blanchard Show, I'm going to talk about Harriet Tubman and a company out in Cambridge where she is from called LWRCI. It's a gun thing, but I'm going to add it here just because I am who I am. And speaking of that, reinventing myself. What does that mean? I'm going to share some insights and bring back a song that makes me smile. Don't know about you, but let me know what you think of this. You have found me in this great Sargasso sea of the internet. Welcome, my friend, to the fun, family, and pet-friendly podcast where I share knowledge, humor, interviews, and wisdom with movie reviews, pop culture references, and things of interest to those who live in and around the nation's capital and beyond. I'm your friend and your brother from another mother, Kenn Blanchard, and this is the Kenn Blanchard Show. And it smells like Old Spice down here. Now, believe it or not, I actually asked Procter & Gamble if it was okay to use the jingle that has been famous since I was a kid of the Old Spice guy. And they said, okay. How about that? I got permission, y'all. I'm your friend and your brother from another mother, the Reverend Kenn Blanchard, and you're listening to the Kenn Blanchard Show. And this week, I'm trying a couple of new things because I'm trying to make myself over. Yes, I am. What does that mean, reinventing yourself? Have you ever thought about it? It's easier than it looks. It's easier than you think, and it's probably a good thing. You know why? Because sometimes we can get stuck in a rut. Sometimes we can do things that hurt us, and we just keep on doing it because we're used to it. And you can get used to anything. We weren't made to stay in the same place our whole lives. We weren't. Not that you have to travel around the world and be a nomad. I'm saying you have to grow. Everybody grows. Everything in the world grows, except for us sometimes, by choice. We don't grow on the inside, and you need to. You need to mature. You need to change. If you don't change, you die. Now, speaking of dying, I just looked out the window, and there was a deer coming in through the broken part of my fence. I have a 5-foot picket fence in the backyard that goes around the back of my property, and a tree knocked down about an 8-foot section of it, and I have yet to fix it because it's in a really weird place, and I have to pull up some posts, and it's going to be some, not major work, but more than I have time to do right now. So this deer walks in, looking around all stupid, and of course, I don't want him there because he ate my hostas earlier this year. So I bang on the door, and I hit the glass, and he runs up the path of the yard just a little bit, and there's another picket fence, that part that has fallen down, sticks his head through, and then runs through the hole, knocks down about 3 or 4 more pickets. So now I got 2 holes. Almost makes me want to cuss. But anyway, back to reinventing myself. You know, before you try to change the world, you should probably just try to change yourself. And that's where I'm at right now. I've been the black man with the gun, the guy who has been for gun rights in the African-American community since like 1991. I've been podcasting since 2007 with the Urban Shooter podcast, and right now I'm up to episode 630 of the Black Man with a Gun Show. That's what I call it now. And I put it on a break for a minute. I wanted to take a hiatus and see if anybody even cared that I was gone. With 630 episodes, there's plenty for somebody to find if they're new. And I've been getting a lot of press just recently because the world is what it is. And I try to be a sensible person. So if they're looking for sensible, here I am. And the podcast is still doing well. The website's still doing okay. The website's older than the podcast. The website's up since 1999. So I'm still getting people trying to sell me stuff and get on the website to sell to my audience. And that's a never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way. But I'm tired, y'all. I'm tired of being that guy. I got another side or two of me. There's many facets to this guy. One of them you've probably seen. If you've been on Facebook, you've seen me sing and say some crazy stuff. You've seen me dance. Yeah, dance in a video and sing some karaoke stuff. I'm doing background music because I always wanted to sing. I always wanted to entertain. I wanted to make people laugh. And that was a hard job for somebody who has always been the serious guy, always been the person who protects you, who's the gun guy, the guy who is like your Secret Service agent, the guy who listens to you when you're going through a tough time, the guy who's been law enforcement, the guy. All my jobs have been counselor or consultant or the shoulder to cry on, and a lot of crying. I've been privy to a lot of tears. And it makes you somber when you're always around that stuff. But that's not all who I am. I want to live before I die, like Frank Sinatra said. And I'm going to try to do that now. That's kind of why this podcast exists. I am doing I'm doing a test. This podcast is going to have some gun-related stuff on it. And I'm not sure whether my audience, you, are interested in that. But if you're a friend of mine, this podcast is for my friends, maybe I can merge the two somehow. We're going to see. I don't know if I have to stay all gun-related stuff on one site and podcast, or I can be all that I am here. Let me know, would you? Send me an email to Kenn Blanchard@gmail.com. Remember, that's Kenn with two N's and then a dot in between Kenn and Blanchard. BLANCHARD@gmail.com. So how do you get better? How do you improve? How do you reinvent yourself? Well, you got to change your goals. And that involves changing your thinking. There was a guy named Zig Ziglar. Used to talk about can't have stinking thinking. And that was a pretty good thing to think about. A lot of us have stinking thinking. We say stuff, and then we are too proud to back down from it, and we have to roll with our missteps, mistakes, and misspokenness. We need to listen more than we talk. You can change your habit after just a couple of weeks. I just finished 31 days of a keto diet. Remember, I've been talking about that thing. I am so glad I ate my first carbs today. I ate some shredded wheat, and man, it was good. Sure did. I lost 13 pounds in 31 days, and my face looks thinner. My six-pack is not there, but my belly is shrunk a little less than it was. I feel better in my clothes, and I'm not going to go overboard and start guzzling beer and eating coconut pie and cake like I want. But I'm going to start working out with my son, hopefully. I won't lose touch with that and build some muscle, see where we go from here. You know, you can change your looks and you can change your diet. And that helps too with reinventing yourself. You know, you can change your routine and that can help you. We get stuck in a routine. We get stuck in a rut. And then we wonder why things aren't the way we want them to be. You can change your physical location. You know, if you were fishing and the fish weren't biting, you could actually roll your rod up the line and move to another spot. But we don't do that with our life. We think we have to stay in a place that's not helping us. I can't find a woman in this spot. I can't find a man in this area. Why don't you leave? Go to where there might be some. Just a thought. How about expressing yourself? That's what this podcast is doing for me. It's allowing me to say stuff that I normally don't tell you and hope that you're listening. Because sometimes the problems that we have are not as bad as we think. But I've learned just recently that what you focus on gets magnified. Your thoughts, you know. Things are usually not as bad as you think they are. But because you focus on them, they appear greater than they seem. Kind of like that little sign that's on your rearview mirror or on the side mirrors of your car. Objects may appear closer than they are or further than they are. Perception, it gets distorted with that focus. And you can just talk yourself into doom. Well, I'm trying to live before I die. I'm going to keep on saying that because that Frank Sinatra song is right. I'm realizing right now that we aren't meant to stop growing. I don't care if you're 57 or 27. And to progress in this life is all about that reinvention. Reinventing yourself. You got to try. You got to fall down just like you did when we were small. We fell a lot before we could walk. And you don't even remember that part. Change. Who it is that you want to be. I got a chance to be somebody else other than the gun guy at the Podfest down in Orlando, Florida. Been there 3 times. And I didn't really talk about being the gun rights guy down there. I was just a podcaster. And I got a chance to speak and I did an MC thing my last gig. Yeah. I actually sang when I was warming up out there. Folks went crazy. Only the front row, I think, was paying attention. But it was a bucket list piece for me. It let me know that I am more than just a black man with a gun. I'm also Kenn Blanchard. And that guy likes to make people laugh and giggle. And I've been doing a lot on Facebook. If you've seen my last couple of videos, you can tell I'm getting comfortable and not caring about squat, which is where I wanted to go. Wanted to make myself a little thick-skinned so that when I did do an interview or did cast myself in something, if I bombed, so what? I try. I've been just a voice for a long time, even though that's where I wanted to be. I didn't know voice acting was a profession until this last decade. I would have tried a lot harder if I'd known that as a kid. I remember sitting now with my comic books talking about Decepticons, assemble. And my dad looking at me like I had 3 heads. Didn't know I could have been a voice actor for maybe Hasbro or some toy. It would have been great. But I guess it wasn't my time. And then you can sit down and be mad that you had somebody hold you back. And yeah, the man kept me down, my father. The man wouldn't let me get better, my father. The man, it's always somebody. When really it's just us. I could have chose to not listen to the man, because the man was wrong about a lot of stuff. So much so, my mom put him out eventually. I left home early to get away from the man, but that's a whole different story. And I'll share that with you someday. I was like that deer. Saw a hole and broke through it. Remember, we should probably be getting better, not just getting older. The two should go together. And I get frustrated sometimes when I see older people who are stuck in their teens. They're acting immature or they haven't grown. Sometimes it's your parents that after you see how they are, you're like, wow, you should have more wisdom than this. You're old as dirt. But no, they're not growing. They're just getting older. And it was not you can't fault them for not learning. But once you think about that, then maybe you can. I know I am. I'm not going to worry about anybody else but me. So if you see me doing something really stupid and on Facebook, in a movie, on a video, just know I'm having fun. And I don't care. Who is this guy who you're talking about, the black man with a gun? If you go to blackmanwithagun.com, you'll see the website. And here's a little bit about that. I have a podcast too. For 25 years, Reverend Kenn Blanchard has been a firearms trainer, a gun rights activist. He's the author of Black Man with a Gun Reloaded. He's been online since 1999. He's helped change the gun laws nationally for concealed carry. This federal law enforcement officer, former U.S. Marine veteran, CIA analyst, cigar-loving, motorcycle-riding pastor of patriots, pistoleros, and paladins is internationally known as the Black Man with a Gun. This show features history, interviews, product reviews, and promotes unity in the community. All right, one of the things about this podcast that I want to highlight is the things that are in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia, and the rest of the world. But there's some stuff locally that folks don't know about. And Harriet Tubman, the hero, the heroine that freed slaves in her day, has a new movie out that starts this week. And I want you to check it out and let me know if it's real, if it's, what do you think about it? Because there's some stuff that we use as myth and fable because she's a hero. And, I love Harriet. I'm so glad there's a movie coming out. I might sneak out tonight and watch it. But there's some truth behind this great lady. Not only that she's about to be on the money, but there's a company, a gun company out in Cambridge that employs her descendants and people that look like me on the Eastern Shore. And I'm going to talk about that coming up next. A couple of years ago, I got a chance to travel to an area in Maryland I had never been before. And I learned about a company that made rifles with names like Reaper and Diadem at the LWRCI International, their personal range, their private range. I had no idea a few weeks ago that LWRC was actually located in Cambridge, Maryland. Didn't know too much about the LWRC rifle, so I went to my local gun store, Fred's Outdoors, down in Waldorf, Maryland, and asked my buddy what he thought of this LWRC. And he said, I got to tell you, of all the rifles up here, I'm not an AR guy. This is the one I would want. Why? It's different. It's high quality. Look at it. And he pulled it off the shelf and he had pride in it. And I thought, yeah, this is kind of funky. It has like a Twizzler barrel to it. I couldn't wait to find out more about this company located in the ungunly friendly state of Maryland that I just happened to live in. Why in the world would a company leave Virginia to come to Maryland? Why would this thing cost so much? All their rifles were $1,000 plus. What's the dealio with the LWRCI? And so I packed and prepared for my hour-and-a-half drive across the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, past all the rural farming and old school stuff that in my younger years, there was nothing between D.C. and Ocean City. A bunch of chicken farms and just poverty. So I was really curious of why a company as big as LWRCI would move. I remember in a college course I took once for creative writing, I was asked what I would do if I won $1 million. And back then my answer was laughed at. After I got rid of my own debt, I said I wanted to create a business that would save a community, help people. It would employ people and allow them the opportunity for a better life. I would set it up so that, of course, it made money, but I wouldn't care if I got rich from it or not. The purpose of it was truly to help families. I just found a company that is doing that in the firearms industry. It's called LWRC International. They make high-performance rifle parts and rifles and parts for other firearms companies and defense contracts. They moved from Virginia to the gun-unfriendly state of Maryland on purpose. They put factories in an impoverished land of Harriet Tubman's eastern shore. For many people, this was a forgotten place. Located in two locations that used to be only rural farmland, chicken farms, and the Sojourner Truth College, is a thriving business. So between DC and OC is LWRCI. Second only to the Purdue poultry empire is this company for employment. When I walked the plant floors watching millions of dollars worth of equipment and Corvette-like attention to detail being put into each build, I saw happy people. Really happy people. Many of them African Americans. So what was bringing Barbara Baird and Carrie Lightfoot of the Well-Armed Women and Women's Outdoor News together, which is the Women's Gun Show podcast, together here in Cambridge, other than this company? Well, I found out that LWRCI was unveiling the creation of a firearm, a rifle, a battle rifle, that they had designed for the well-armed woman. It was their brand, input from 100 plus women on what would feel good to them. It wasn't just any old rifle painted pink or with some cool grips. This one was actually designed for women by women. The barrel, 16.1 inches. Weight, 6.5 pounds. Length, 32 to 35.4 inches long, depending on if you open the Magpul stock up or not. Has ambidextrous charging handle, cold hammer forged, Nikkor treated spiral fluted barrel, that Twizzler barrel I was talking about. It's a real custom design, slimmer, compact, rail engineered rifle. I mean, it's a direct build. Everything about it is made for high function, high performance. There's no slouch gun, actually. Only thing that's different about it that a dude might not see is that it has a purple trigger. It's painted in Cerakote, a purple, which is the brand of the Well-Armed Woman. Other than that, and the Well-Armed Woman logo on the magwell, you'll want this thing. I'm telling you right now. It's light. It's comfortable. It shoots well. There's nothing wrong with this firearm. Just so happens, women designed it. I'm actually going to see if my wife wants to get one. See if she wants to get an AR. Can tell you a little about Cambridge, Maryland. It was settled by English colonists in 1684. Cambridge is one of the oldest colonial cities in Maryland. At the time of English colonization, the Algonquian-speaking Choptank Indians were already living along the river of the same name. And during the colonial years, the English colonists developed farming on the eastern shore. The largest plantations were devoted first to tobacco and then mixed farming. Planters brought enslaved Africans to farm tobacco and mixed farming. The town was a trading center for the area. The town pier was the center for slave trading for the region. A sad history documented well in historical markers throughout the town center. It was incorporated officially in 1793 and occupies part of the former Choptank Indian Reservation. Cambridge was named after the town and county in England. The town became a stop on the Underground Railroad, which had an extensive network of safe houses for slaves escaping to the north. There is a history here. Harriet Tubman was born to enslaved parents in Dorchester County, Maryland, and originally named Arminta Harriet Ross. Her mother, Harriet Ritt Green, was owned by Mary Pattison Broadus. Her father, Ben Ross, was owned by Anthony Thompson, who eventually married Mary Broadus. Araminta, or Minty, was one of 9 children born to Ritt and Ben between 1808 and 1832. And while the year of Araminta's birth is unknown, it probably occurred between 1820 and 1825. Minta's early life was full of hardship. Mary Broadus' son Edward sold 3 of her sisters to distant plantations, severing the family. When a trader from Georgia approached Broadus about buying Ritt's youngest son Moses, Ritt successfully resisted the furthering a fracture of her family, setting a powerful example for her young daughter. This person became known as Harriet Tubman. There's a museum in Cambridge about Harriet Tubman. There's a lot of history here. I felt it when I was there. So while I'm talking about Harriet Tubman, let me just keep on going then. You see, physical violence was a part of her daily life. The violence she suffered early in life caused permanent physical injuries. Harriet later recounted a particular day when she was lashed 5 times before breakfast. She carried the scars for the rest of her life. The most severe injury occurred when Tubman was an adolescent. History tells us of a story of when she was sent to a dry goods store for supplies, and she encountered another slave who had left the field without permission. The man's overseer demanded that Tubman help restrain the runaway. When she refused, the overseer threw a 2-pound weight that struck her in the head. She suffered seizures, severe headaches, and narcoleptic episodes for the rest of her life. She also experienced intense dream states, which she classified as religious experiences. By the time that Harriet reached adulthood, around half of the African American people on the eastern shore of Maryland were free. It was not unusual for a family to include both free and enslaved people, as did Tubman's immediate family. In 1844, Harriet married a free black man named John Tubman. Little is known about John Tubman or his marriage to Harriet. Any children they may have had would have been considered enslaved, since the mother's status dictated that any offspring would be whatever the mother was. And Araminta changed her name to Harriet around that time of her marriage, possibly to honor her mother. Harriet Tubman escaped from slavery in 1849, fleeing to Philadelphia. She decided to escape following a bout of illness and the death of her former owner in 1849. She feared that her family would be further separated and feared for her own fate, as she was known as a sickly slave of low economic value. She initially left Maryland with 2 of her brothers, Ben and Henry, on September 17, 1849. A notice published in the Cambridge Democrat offered a $300 reward for the return of Araminta, Minty, Harry, and Ben. Once they had left, Tubman's brother had second thoughts and returned to the plantation. Harriet had no plans to remain in bondage. Seeing her brother safely home, she soon set off alone for Pennsylvania. Harriet used the network known as the Underground Railroad to travel nearly 90 miles to Philadelphia. She crossed into the free state of Pennsylvania with a feeling of relief and awe, and later recalled, she said, "When I found I had crossed that line, I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person. There was such a glory over everything. The sun came like gold through the trees and over the fields. I felt like I was in heaven." Rather than remaining in the safety of the North, Tubman made it her mission to rescue her family and others living in slavery. In December 1850, Tubman received a warning that her niece, Keisha, was going to be sold, along with her 2 children, Keisha's husband, and free black man named John Bowley. They made a winning bid for his wife at an auction in Baltimore. Harriet then helped the entire family make the journey to Philadelphia. This was the first of many trips by Tubman, who earned the name Moses for her leadership. Over time, she was able to guide her parents, several siblings, and about 60 others to freedom. One family member who declined to make the journey was Harriet's husband, John, who preferred to stay in Maryland with his new wife. The dynamics of escaping slavery changed in 1850 with the passage of the Fugitive Slave Law. This law stated that escaped slaves could be captured in the North and returned to slavery, leading to the abduction of former slaves and free blacks living in free states. Law enforcement officials in the North were compelled to aid in the capture of slaves, regardless of their personal principles. In response to the law, Tubman rerouted the Underground Railroad to Canada, which prohibited slavery categorically. In December 1851, Tubman guided a group of 11 fugitives northward. There was evidence to suggest that the party stopped at the home of abolitionist and former slave Frederick Douglass. In April 1858, Tubman was introduced to the abolitionist John Brown, who advocated the use of violence to disrupt and destroy the institution of slavery. Tubman shared Brown's goals and at least tolerated his methods. Tubman claimed to have no prophetic vision of Brown before they met. When Brown began recruiting supporters for an attack on slaveholders at Harper's Ferry, he turned to the, quote, General Tubman for help. After Brown's subsequent execution, Tubman praised him as a martyr. Harriet Tubman remained active during the Civil War, working for the Union Army as a cook and a nurse. Tubman quickly became an armed scout and a spy, the first woman to lead an armed expedition in the war. She guided the Combahee River Raid, which liberated more than 700 slaves in South Carolina. In early 1859, abolitionist Senator W.H. Seward sold Tubman a small piece of land on the outskirts of Auburn, New York. The land in Auburn became a haven for Tubman's family and friends. Tubman spent the years following the war on this property, tending to her family and others who had taken up residence there. In 1869, she married a Civil War veteran named Nelson Davis. In 1874, Harriet and Nelson adopted a baby girl named Gertie. Despite Harriet's fame and reputation, she was never financially secure. Tubman's friends and supporters were able to raise some funds to support her. One admirer, Sarah H. Bradford, wrote a biography entitled Scenes in the Life of Harriet Tubman, which the proceeds go to Tubman and her family. Harriet continued to give freely in spite of her economic woes. In 1903, she donated a parcel of her land to the American Methodist Episcopal Church in Auburn. The Harriet Tubman Home for the Aged opened on this site in 1908. As Harriet Tubman aged, the head injuries sustained early in her life became more painful and disruptive. She underwent brain surgery at Boston, Massachusetts General Hospital to alleviate the pains and the, quote, buzzing she experienced regularly. Tubman was eventually admitted into the rest home named in her honor. Surrounded by friends and family, she died of pneumonia in 1913. Harriet Tubman, widely known and well respected while she was alive, became an American icon in the years after she died. A survey at the end of the 20th century named her as one of the most famous civilians in American history before the Civil War, third only to Betsy Ross and Paul Revere. She continued to inspire generations of Americans struggling for civil rights with her bravery and bold action. When she died, Tubman was buried with military honors at Fort Hill Cemetery in Auburn. The city commemorated her life with a plaque on the courthouse. Tubman was celebrated in many ways throughout the nation on the 20th century. Dozens of schools were named in her honor, and both the Harriet Tubman Home in Auburn and the Harriet Tubman Museum in Cambridge serve as monuments to her life. Barbara made a trip to the Harriet Tubman Museum while we were there, and of course, because of the lack of funds and funding, it closed early, so she didn't get a chance to see it. In June 2015, Treasury Secretary Jacob J. Lew was criticized for saying that it was likely a woman that would appear on a $10 bill, which features a portrait of Alexander Hamilton, the influential founding father who found renewed popularity because of the hit Broadway musical Hamilton. The decision to have Tubman replace Jackson, a slaveholder, who played a role in the removal of Native Americans from their land, was widely praised. In April 2016, the U.S. Treasury Department announced that Harriet Tubman will replace Andrew Jackson on the center of a new $20 bill. The announcement came after the Treasury Department received a groundswell of public comments following the Women on 20s campaign called for a notable American woman to appear on U.S. currency. Secretary Liu's choice of the freed slave and freed fighter Harriet Tubman to one day feature on a $20 bill is an exciting one, especially given that she emerged as the choice of more than 500,000 voters in their online poll last spring, he said. Women on 20s stated on his website. Not only did she devote her life to racial equality, she fought for women's rights alongside the nation's leading suffragists. And so, as we walked the plant floor, I was feeling all that. The fact that I was in the grounds of Harriet Tubman. I like seeing a smiling, mature woman named Wanda, who was part of the barrel process. I like seeing a younger woman overlooking the process of cleaning a part through this really expensive-looking machine. I watched several men that looked like me taking pride in doing their part in a process of making a superior product. Yeah, this rifle cost more. It's made in the U.S. by U.S. citizens. Yeah, you can buy an AR for 1/3 the price, but except for the fact that the bullets you can use are the same, there are many differences. You can buy a Nissan Versa to go into work, or you can ride in style in a Tesla Model S. Both the Timex and the Rolex tell time, but what's the difference? The difference is you. I have seen it. You are paying for quality products if you buy a LWRCI. You're paying for technology. You're paying to employ Americans. You're paying for personal attention to detail in a firearm that you can trust your life on. All right, after coming off a successful ketone diet, our sponsor is True Brain, truebrain.com. Please use this link and I can get credit for it. Check it out. It's brain food designed by UCLA trained neuroscientists to help you create faster impact, more and grab more life. Truebrain.com. It's brain food, helps you with ketosis, and it's good stuff. Check it out at truebrain.com. And please, please, please use that link in the show notes so they know that you heard it here on the Kenn Blanchard podcast. Hey, you're still here. Cool beans. Let me know if you saw my little blurb on Facebook page. I tried something different, and of course it didn't work out like I thought, but maybe it announced that this was coming. Okay? Let me know what you think about the Harriet movie, and if you learned anything about the company, LWRCI, and their rifles. Or you don't care and keep the gun thing out of this, Ken. This is just whatever. I want to know your opinion on this episode. Thanks. All right, that's it for this week. I'm hoping that you consider reinventing yourself. Remember that the only person you control is yourself. And you can do that by just keeping a positive attitude, despite what's happening around you. Just in case nobody else told you this today, I love you. And not a damn thing you can do about it. Until the next episode, shalom, baby.